Yeah,
Okay.
but I
If
could,
you're a Pharisee, you need more.
yeah, I could forever say that I caused a strike at McGill. It's just a weird flex. Okay, so before we get like formally started in the class, um, I'm not asking you to like pre-explain your presentation or anything, Leonie. Do you think it would be better for you to start with your presentation and then we kind of expand from there, or do we want to start with a bit of context and then go into it? Like, how do you think it would work best for your presentation?
I'm basically talking about the concepts explored in the first
Yeah.
part of
Mhm.
The Great Derangement.
Yeah.
Have you read it, The Great Derangement? I tried. Honestly, did not get how it fitted with the text,
Yeah.
but that's mostly
Mhm.
because I did not get the text.
No, that's a
Oh,
scene.
is that you mean the pictograms?
Yes.
Yeah, they're.
Oh my god.
We'll talk about it.
Nice. So
So,
yeah, my aim was to try to connect them, and then I read the poems and I looked at the pictograms and I was like,
Yeah.
boom.
yeah.
Okay, I'll be full disclosure.
Go for it.
I think there is a connection between the Great Derangement and the poems. It is not the connection I expected to make because I got this book confused with another one of Gosh's books. So
one
that's
was it?
what the Nutmeg's Curse.
Okay.
Which is an easier connection to make.
Yeah.
There are still connections to make, I would argue, where stories of the land are concerned, right? Broadly speaking, and even like weather patterns, which he kind of alludes to here and there. But I have to admit, that is entirely my fault. I got the texts confused in my mind, and now we're going to have to retroactively force in some connections here. But okay, well, in that case, if you're comfortable with starting,
Yeah, I'd like that. I forgot my charger, so
what kind of plug do you have? Do you have like a USB-C?
no. I mean,
I think
I might have to.
if I'm presenting first, I won't need to charge it.
Okay.
Oh,
Then
so that's
c'est
actually
sûr.
better.
all the more reason to do so. Okay.
Want to try this?
No, I think I'll be fine if I'm
Yeah,
presenting now.
okay.
Thanks, though.
Since you have a PowerPoint, yeah, if you don't mind, Alicia, I'll just get closer just so I can see the PowerPoint a little bit better. I'll be taking notes during your presentation, not for like any positive or negative things, just to give me again a general sense of what you said and just pathways to follow
Problem.
up on.
I will say
Mhm.
this is how I understood and interpreted the text.
Mhm.
If ever I say anything that you're like, why no? It's my best here.
No, it's good.
Yeah, presentations make me nervous, but it's silly because we're
I like sincerity.
yeah.
It's okay.
I don't know why, because I'll teach in front of like a bunch of teenagers, and this is like my thing.
Yes, but
This is like
very different.
c'est confrontant.
Teenagers are not there to understand what you're saying.
That is true. But yeah, it's.
I think it's the being evaluated part. I'm like,
That's true.
I think you can figure out at this point that
wait,
you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like unless you're talking about an entirely different topic than what was planned, you'll be fine.
So this presentation will be about my hobbies and
Yeah, exactly.
I thought you were kidding. I was like,
sorry.
She's good.
Okay, very
Embroidery.
I'll just put a timer on to have an idea.
Sure.
Do you want me to stop at some?
Stop whenever your presentation is finished.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so how I thought I would approach this today is by first giving context a little bit about Amitav Ghosh's life to better understand how he came to write The Great Derangement and his different novels. I brought two of them that are related a little bit to the part we had to read for class today. So he was born in Calcutta in India, in 1956. And it's in the West Bengal part of India. Do you guys know where that is on the map?
Quite close to Bangladesh.
Exactly. So I think I put a little picture here. So Calcutta is here in West Bengal, which goes over both India and part of Bangladesh. Okay. So he is the son of a diplomat. So when he was a kid, he was brought to live in different countries. The ones that are mentioned in the biography I found online are India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Iran. So he has a pretty diverse background and life experience that started pretty early in his life. Then he completed both his BA and MA at the University of Delhi in India before he completed his PhD in social anthropology at the University of Oxford in 1982. While he was completing his PhD, he went to Egypt to work on his research. So it's really like it paints a picture of him being aware of many different situations in many different geographical parts of the world. So social anthropology. What is that? Do you guys have an idea? I was confused. I didn't know. I had to look it up.
What do you call it again?
Social anthropology.
Social.
Does it ring a bell?
No.
It's like I know what both of these things are separate.
Okay, anthropology.
It's like the study of humans to me. The
Yeah.
way humans brought up, and everything.
Yeah, what kind of humans?
I would say more societies.
Societies, yeah. And social.
Yeah. So I'm like,
It's kind of redundant.
yeah, in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, or it's specifically on how they organize themselves in society and like political formations and stuff like that.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting.
I put up a little definition here. So it's a branch of the social sciences that focuses on understanding the social structures and cultural practices of societies. It aims to analyze societies without relying on historical narratives, and instead emphasizing on the daily functioning of social systems and their interconnections. And it emerged basically between the two world wars as a different way or a new way to understand the world. Okay. So it really, some of the key areas they like mention are kinship, political institutions, and localized belief systems that are understood by field work. So like being present on the field. Good.
Mhm.
So I feel like that when I read that definition, it really helped me understand maybe where the grounds are for the Great Derangement here. Yeah.
If anyone wants to like
It's there in
flip through.
So now, I think that's it for that part. So he did teach in different universities. So the University of Delhi, the American University of Cairo in Egypt, in the States at Columbia and Harvard, among others. And he became a full-time writer in 2004. But I think one of his first novel was published in 1986, if I'm not mistaken. So for the Great Derangement, it's the central theme is anthropogenic environmental damage, basically.
Mhm.
So the damage caused by humans on the earth, but also how, because we understand like the fact that through history and way before we were there, the planet and like the universe has evolved in a certain way and there are changes all the time. But what he means by like the Anthropocene and anthropogenic damage is more like the fast paced changes that are right now having an impact on how those changes happen through time. So it's like we're at a point where it's going so fast that it's like disrupting how the earth has normally evolved until now. Makes sense?
Mhm.
Perfect.
Yeah, you sound like a scientist.
I'm thank you. So his book is divided, it's a piece of nonfiction. It's divided in 3 parts. The first one is called Stories, but there's also history and politics. To be fully honest, I've read stories and then history. Never had time to look at politics. Maybe at some point I will. The first part is the one we started reading for class, and takes up half of his book. And basically, in every different part, he looks at the limits that either literature in the stories part, history, or politics have had in reimagining or imagining climate crisis at the present time. So it starts with stories of his family history, and I think it's important in situating, all of his work, basically, because he was born in Calcutta, which is like over here on the map, and it's really close. It's on the shore of the Padma River, which goes all the way down here to the Sundarbans. Do you guys know what the Sundarbans are?
No.
Actually, the coast.
It is the coast here, exactly. And it's really interesting because when you have a satellite image of it, this is what comes up like on Google when you look it up. So this is the picture of the coast of the Sundarbans. And it's basically in an interview or a presentation he had for the Chicago Institute of, I can't remember because I didn't cite it in my thing, but I've listened to it as I was getting ready. He compares it to the Everglades. So it's like a swamp. It's a mangrove forest. And because of wind and the up and downs of the sea level, the background and the landscape changes like drastically all the time. Okay, which is like kind of interesting regarding the different pieces he wrote. Where this one, The Hungry Tide, takes place fully in the Sundarbans, where the landscape is constantly changing. And then this one starts in the Sundarbans and evolves it's a migration story, so it takes place in a bunch of different places in the world. So, basically in this first section, what I got from it is that he kind of asked the question, can the realist novel successfully represent climate crisis? So when you think of the realist novel, what do you think about? What do you think of?
I'm going to let you all answer this one.
I don't want to put you guys on the spot. Just we're chatting.
Yeah.
It's hard to say anything regarding this. Does anything cross his mind?
If you think of maybe the difference between the romantics and then the realist novel, in terms of conventions, do you have any idea of like what's different?
It's like maybe,
yeah, you try something.
It's like realists are just, I don't know, more negative in a way, but it's just because they're trying to portray life in a real lens, but it's just, to me, it sounds a little bit negative.
It sounds like jaded a little bit.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, okay.
You said it sounds a little negative.
Yeah, it's less.
But the romantic world is kind of like that, right?
Yeah.
It has its negative way of seeing things around the world.
Ooh, that's interesting.
But to me, there's like an uptone. It's like, oh, there's this, but also.
Yeah, like in the romantic, to add on, I think to both of you, I think you're getting onto something where romanticism is responding to a very negative situation, right? We've talked about it in class, right? The emergence of basically the contemporary situation that we're in. Yeah. But a lot of romantics still see, I think you're right, Alicia, the possibility of going past that and saying like, no, we're not so far gone that everything is doomed.
I guess at the time they weren't.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
It was like there's still solutions.
Right. Like you can
Yeah.
kind of argue historically, like till the cows come home, as to whether or
Yeah,
not they
and
were
when you
correct.
read
But
realists and naturalists, to me, I'm thinking of a particular book in my head. I just don't remember. It's like a train book, the book of the train.
okay.
God, what's the name of that book?
Yes, the book of the train.
The book of the train. Yeah.
It's like not Orwell. It's the other one, or is it the same? Oh, animal. It's an animal. It's
Animal Farm.
like no, it's a train, but it's gonna annoy me already.
When you get there,
But-
let us know.
Just to while you're thinking of it, to finish off,
Yeah.
right? Realism emerged especially in the post World War One
Mhm.
era, right, where people were confronted more than ever with the harsh realities of existence, right?
Yeah.
And public education made it so that more and more people could actually express those harsh realities that for a long time had just kind of been left unsaid, mostly because writers and artists were of a kind of elite or bourgeois class and wouldn't have necessarily expressed it in the same way as the
Yeah.
average person would have, right? So it does, I think you're right, Alicia, where it does appear to us as very dark,
Yeah.
right? Because the context in which it emerged is a rather dark one, but it's not. By definition, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
dark. What it's trying to do is demonstrate reality as the author sees it.
An answer to the romantic world.
It is very much an answer to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, and I don't think we need to
Yeah.
do that right now. Like, you can go into like a whole discussion as to whether or not realism is entirely possible or not.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna
I
let
mean,
you go.
he kind of asked if the modern novel or the realist novel can has the tools or the within its conventions is able to talk about the like climate issues, but also like represent our reality right now, kind of thing. Where is I going on that? The notes.
By the way, that's one of the ways in which, while she's looking for her notes, that's one of the ways in which we'll tie it into the poetry today. So we'll keep that in mind.
So basically, I'll read the quote here that I put. It is thus that the novel takes its modern form through the relocation of the unheard of toward the background, while the everyday moves into the foreground. Okay, so in the way the realist novel appears or has been presented over time, it kind of pushes unpredictable events in the back, while the mundane, the everyday life things are what are presented within the novels, because it is kind of how people's realities have been transmitted over the past decades, or like so he kind of calls fillers, so the everyday moves into the foreground, he calls those fillers, where it's just routine, the mundane, and he defines them by as an attempt at rationalizing the novelistic universe, turning it into a world of few surprises, fewer adventures, and no miracles at all. Okay, so I don't know if it's right now that I've made but I think that like in this course, as we've like discussed a lot, we're seeing more and more unpredictable patterns in the environment happen and stuff. So he kind of wonders if maybe this is not how one can represent the crisis. So this format, this way of doing things. So is the novel the right tool to do it? Good. And what I've identified as like an important concept, I think it's the like last one we'll like really dive into to get to my point by the end, is the concept of recognition. Okay, so he presents in the first few pages recognition as he defines it as a passage from ignorance to knowledge. So from not knowing to knowing. From this definition, what you get is like, oh, well, recognizing if you don't know and then you know is similar to comprehending or understanding. but he does like trace a line, and he says recognition is not comprehension. Okay, because of the prefix re, that means to meet again with something. So he says that the knowledge that results from recognition then is not the same kind as the discovery of something new. It arises rather from a renewed reckoning with a potentiality that lies within oneself. So what does the word potentiality inspire? Like, what do you think of when you hear potentiality?
Kind of possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought potential, but that's basically possibility.
Yeah. Okay. And in our very modern world where we try to predict stuff and understand how mechanisms work in our world, potentiality, I think I saw it as like being able to maybe predict stuff, or it has to do with patterns and with what's the like les probabilités, like kind of like math, trying to get to something that we will be able to measure. So, and this ties in with this idea of his family history, growing up in the Sundarbans, because they lived there and were within the nature there and the harsh realities there. They kind of understood the world to be changing in unpredictable ways, because as we see it in this novel, I haven't read this one, but in this one here, you like the novel is literally shaped by the way the swamp moves, because some like river passages will open up or close up completely from one day to the other. So the different paths you take change all the time. And because of the family history he has and having lived in such environments, well, when things change around him, like in our environment, we tend to recognize it. Just how we get used to the winter here or stuff like that. We recognize our environment. This leads to the question that I put here. What happens when, because of human activity, for example, the environment responds in unpredictable ways? So he gave the example of Lake Nios, I don't know how to pronounce it, but there's a disaster in Congo where there's like this environmental thing that happened, and a lake started releasing CO2 within the air, and it killed over 1,000 people within the span of a day. And that was completely like unpredicted. It happened, and then people just had to deal with it. So what happens when the world starts acting up in such ways, and how can we represent those within art and literature? That's kind of like the question he leads to. This last part is to make links with what we've read a little bit already about this concept. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So on page 5 in my version of the PDF, he wrote, inflamed lungs and sinuses prove once again that there is no difference between the without and the within. So that's when he talks about the carbon dioxide event in Congo. And it says that the energy that surrounds us is an all-encompassing presence that may have its own purposes about which we know nothing. So, in a sense, he's giving matter, he's giving the entire living but also inanimate world a sense of purpose and agency that the modern novel fails to recognize. Point. That is what I understand. And I think that was published in 2016. And I think that Gun Island, which was published in 2019, it was his following like novel to this work of nonfiction, could be an attempt I don't know if it's like a successful or unsuccessful attempt, but an attempt to picture the non-human characters as agents in the story, as responsible for shaping the world and the story the characters live in. That's it for me. Hey, ça a bien été. Yeah, that's what I.
Nice.
Well, she brought the level of presentation here
Yeah.
up to the stars, and now we have to work our ass.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Probably begin
No, but all jokes aside, like I said, I'm very flexible on like what the format is and everything like that. Like obviously, this was a very good presentation,
Thank
but
you.
like if you have a different approach or a different way of thinking about your presentations, like feel totally free. Give us a lot to think about there, Liani. I really like the idea of predicting that you brought up. We'll come back to the idea of, or I would like to come back, I should say, to the idea of there's no difference between without and within, right? In relation to the poetry, as well as the questions of form that you brought up.
Yeah.
I think all of this is in some way stuff that I wanted to talk about. So that's really, really good. Does anyone have any responses or ideas that they wanted to bring up in relation to Liani's presentation, or just immediate thoughts?
I like it very much, especially the part there, because I was not sure about the conception of fillers and how it works in this book there. It was very good, very pedagogical, if you will, right? Very, very clear.
Thanks.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Very nice.
I like the recognition part. I think it really encompasses everything that I felt about the pictograms. Because I did not understand it, but now I can just be like, oh, I recognize it.
Yeah, good. By the way, we're going to slowly get to them, but if you want to look through this book, also, this is one that I brought for today. This is a nonfiction book that's explicitly talking about the pictograms that Law is writing about, right? So they're real pictograms, and we'll get into contextually what it is, right? But if you want, if you want to flip through it, and one of the main authors, or the main author, Annie York, is an Indigenous elder who is part of the nation that made the rock art. So feel free to flip through that, by the way.
Pictograms is the same thing that pictographs, or there is...
Yeah, it's an interchangeable term.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So I guess, well, we can jump right into the question of form here. So Wa uses the term pictograms. Annie York, in speaking in Nlaka'pamux, which is the nation and language that made these drawings, says that the most accurate translation into English is writing, right? So she doesn't even consider them drawing or art, right? She would consider it along the same form and language as what I'm writing here on my tablet, which I guess does broadly open up the question of how form actually engages with the medium that it's trying to portray, or the message that it's trying to portray, right? And how our expectations are kind of mitigated by what form we think something is, right? And I think that's one of the things that Gosh is kind of getting at with the idea of the realist novel and its possibilities. Yeah. I'll use the example because you brought it up earlier, Marcio, where something like Heart of Darkness, a lot of people did consider it realistic for a bit, right? Although today, reading it, I don't think any of us would consider it to be realistic, right? Or even a realist novel. And so our expectations of what the book is and how it actually functions do change according to that, right? And our responses to it. Where I think Gosh is kind of interesting in his books, I haven't read those books specifically, but in other books that I've read, is his willingness to play around with that form, right? And say, okay, well, something like the novel is arguably a very colonial form, right? It kickstarted in Europe, and I think we talked about this in class, if I remember correctly. I don't remember. Where the novel, as we understand it today, emerged at a very specific moment in Europe, right? Was started by the British and French, and was really emphasized at a moment when colonial expansion was on the rise. Yeah. And the form itself was used as justification for the superiority of European language and thought, right? Look at us, we're so great, we're able to put 1,000,000 words onto the page in beautiful stories, right? Most of those stories have, as you would expect, aged extremely poorly and are not that great, but that was the justification, right? That was used at the time on a form and literary level. You're laughing, Alicia. Do you agree here?
No, it's just because I just thought in a million years probably people are gonna think that about our writings, and I was like, this is
100%.
hilarious.
Yeah.
100%. In the same way that I'm like, I read Moll Flanders today. I'm like, I want to shoot myself in the foot reading it. I'm sure someone would read, I don't know, some book talk book.
Potter.
Oh,
Probably not gonna age.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like, no shade against, people who appreciate those books at the time or what they actually offer to people. But that's, again, it kind of fits in with the point of our appreciation of something and our response to something is very contingent on the place, time, environment that we're in, right? And I think this is crucial to the pictograms and was poetry and what Gosh is getting at, right? Very, very good stuff. I'm wondering out loud where we should begin, right? I'm looking at my notes here. One of the things that I really liked about your presentation, Annie, was your addressing, this is something that you both brought up as well, of recognition, potentiality, and of predicting the future. Yeah. And I think I would ask the question to kind of put it in more conversational terms or terms that we can find useful for our class today. What is the problem with trying to predict? Gosh is trying to predict the planet, or saying, like, in some way, right, he's getting at predicting the planet and its movements and its weather patterns, right? Would there be an issue with this, right? Or what are the failures or potential failures of doing something like this?
That's the thing about making prediction.
Mm-hmm.
If you make a mistake, you're gonna be crucified.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and people are kind of okay. Let's not do this. I don't want to expose myself that much. Otherwise, I'm gonna be judged, and maybe my next works will not blow.
Right. Okay. Right. So there is a risk to predicting. Yeah. Both on a personal level or like reputational, we'll say, but also a social issue to predicting. Yeah. Because people do take it seriously. Yeah. Right or wrong. Right. People do like the certainty of it. Yeah. Go ahead.
To follow up on that, I feel like there is a risk socially and what's the other, like, reputational, because it is a very human action to try to predict, and like I don't think that other like entities or like stuff around us try to understand and control and frame and the way we do with predictions and probabilities, and like while we like value ourselves a lot because of our minds and our ways of imagining and thinking compared to other living things, it's also like deeply flawed because it's kind of like impossible sometimes to predict the unpredictable.
I feel like it's especially true with this. Like you said, it's never happened before that we know of anyway. This kind of unpredictable, like this wave of change that happens because we kind of pushed it more.
Yeah.
So we don't have any bases.
I feel like it's a bit naive.
Yeah, it's like we don't have anything to base us on to predict anything.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be scientific because we don't have any numbers or anything to like push us through. So it would just be like
to guide us
creating
towards
imaginative ways of how it could go, but nothing concrete or anything, nothing that we actually could see happening because we've never seen it happen. So it's a little imaginative, it's like, oh, this could happen, but like, on what basis are you on right now? How do you know this? Is kind of a question I would ask. It's like, you think that, but how would you know?
How would you know?
Yeah.
Because it never happened before, this kind of stuff, or at least we've never seen it. So
okay, good. All of this is really good. It's a very human thing to want to predict. Yeah? But actually, no. To get back to your point, a lot of entities, human and non-human, I guess, do something that we would call prediction.
Okay.
Insofar as, just to take a really simple example, things grow according to a certain period of time, right? I wouldn't say that a potato or a cedar tree or, I don't know, any herbs that you have in your backyard have some kind of like higher consciousness necessarily, right, and are able to build tools, but there is a kind of predictive pattern insofar as the planet and its entities know when to grow and how to grow at a specific time, right, and in a specific place. There's a reason why, I don't know, foxes only exist in North America and not, I don't know, in South Africa. I don't know if there's actually foxes in South Africa. It's maybe like the bad example here. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but you get what I'm getting at. There is a kind of predictability to certain things, right? But I like the idea that you all alluded to, either directly or indirectly, of what makes our form of predicting so unique, in both I would say both positive and negative way, depending on the situation, is the scientific drive to control and frame something. Yeah. And that has helped us a lot in many ways, right? The example that I will give forever is medicine, right? Medicine is entirely based on our ability to predict certain patterns that are caused by certain issues and viruses and diseases, right? And that's fantastic. I will always want to live in the modern era because of the existence of Tylenol, right? Like, I will never say otherwise, right? And that's a form of prediction, right? And of wanting to control what is otherwise a natural phenomenon, right? So it is positive in some ways. But in other ways, it can be entirely destructive, right? As we've talked about many, many times in the context of this class. Yeah. Where I think this is, I guess where this is interesting is we have taken this idea of predicting so far, right, that we think we can just predict our way out of the crisis that we're dealing with right now. Does that make sense?
No.
Right? If I put it that way? And just when you were talking, Alicia, about, right, we've never experienced something like this before, right? So arguably we have. It's just we weren't able to actually do anything about it. And the one example that came to mind was the extinction of the dinosaurs. Right? Even if they could predict that there was this massive meteor that was coming towards Earth, right? 65.2 million years ago or whatever, would it have changed anything? If a crocodile knew, like, oh yes, this is coming, and wrote a paper about it or whatever, so what?
Yeah.
Right? So what? Now, I think the question here is, how do we make this into a positive? Because it can be a very depressing thing consider. Yeah, is like, well, there's some things that we just cannot control, and even if we can predict, there's nothing we can like formally do about it. Right? You can't stop a volcano from exploding. You can't put a big cap on it or whatever and just stop it from going off. It would be very fun. It sounds like the plot of like a John Scalzi novel or something like that, but like, right? It would be insane and absurd. But I don't think that should stop us from living our lives in positive and, to use a term that's often associated with indigenous resurgence, right? Slowly tying it into our topic for today. I think it can still be used for generative action. Right? Does this all make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay. This is where I think Gosh is again useful in calling his first part of The Great Derangement stories. Right? What are the stories he tells, if not acceptance of a certain kind of non-control over certain forces in the planet, right, and on the planet? The one that what you had brought a really good one up. I think it was on page 19.
Yeah, I think so. 17, 19.
17,
I had
maybe.
quoted.
Yeah. Oh no, that was the probability stuff. Although he does bring up the tornado, right?
Was it the carbon dioxide?
Oh yeah, the carbon dioxide one. Yeah. Okay, I forget what page that was on, but 5?
4 or 5 also.
5. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, like you can still. I guess the new question to you is, what is the power of story in this specific context? Right? In a world where we can predict a lot of things, but cannot necessarily control them, right? With our great powers of prediction, right? We can, with the click of a button, I can know what the weather is going to be like for the next 14 days, right? That is, well, more or less, right? With some accuracy, with enough accuracy that I can decide what to wear.
I'm like, they're often wrong.
Yeah, sure.
But still.
Okay, let's say even within the next 24 hours,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, it's at least it's a little bit more accurate if we get closer, of course, right? So let's say within the next 24
It is
or
supposed
48
to rain
hours.
later.
I know, I saw
And
that.
I forgot my umbrella.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping they're wrong, actually.
I don't know. Just looking at it now, it says 100% chance. So it's coming.
I saw the clouds, but it might be just like rain.
It's thunderstorms, apparently.
Yeah.
Literally,
Fun
and
times.
that's the thing you want.
May I remind you, I walked 30 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no.
Oh, God.
I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. But, right, so then what's the power of... Why would he be so interested in stories in this case, right? I think there's a very specific reason why stories have a strong valence for Gosh, and again, this is something that we'll come back to in relation to the rock art. Why do they matter so much in a world where predictability is at its peak, and yet our control over that predictability is arguably at its lowest ever? Why stories?
Well, in relation to Gosh there, I think because of his childhood,
Good. Yes.
you mentioned there,
Let's get psychoanalytical.
he grew up
Yeah.
hearing, listening to stories about his environment there. And actually, this kind of was some kind of inspiration for him to try to explain his own environment, and then maybe he's powered by that.
Good.
Or maybe it was even used in a way to not control, but adapt
Mm-hmm.
to the way his environment changes
Say
around him.
lives.
See?
Nice.
Because in Gun Island, very good read, by the way. It's not like my favorite novels, but he does like the main character is an American who visits the Sundarbans and for research on because he works in a bookstore or he does research on old tales. And for research on this Indian tale, he ends up being within like on the river of the Sundarbans trying to find this little cabin and the like land changes and their very like lives depend on their ability to adapt and maybe not like predict in a sense but not to control it but to adapt to it kind of thing.
Good. Yeah, I think this idea of explanation and adaptation is really good. And there's a key difference, right, between controlling and explaining, right? It's not the same thing. We often have a tendency in the modern era to kind of conflate both, right? Or to use one for the other, right? What better way to control something if you can explain and define it as clearly as possible? Yeah. And again, that's been used for both positive. I'm not saying this like super
Just
critically,
that.
right? That's just how science literally works, right? You're trying to understand something in order to, better react to it. But I think where the major difference is again, our ability to mentally engage and overcome the situations that otherwise would kind of overwhelm us, right? And I think that's why his subtitle is so key here, right? You didn't bring it up, but I think it's worth highlighting, right? Climate change and the unthinkable, right? What do stories do if not allow us to think the unthinkable, right? And that can be a very powerful thing in the context of the planetary consciousness, right? That we're like slowly unpacking here in this class, and that I think to again make connections to our core topic of the day, what the Nlaka'pamux were doing with the rock art, and what Wa is doing with his poetry. Right? These are all variations on considering the unthinkable. Yeah. Does this all make sense so far?
It helped.
It helped. Okay. Yes!
We're getting there.
Yeah. Okay, I must admit, like, when I first... the only reason I came across these poems is because I'm actually... One of my chapters of my dissertation is on this book, specifically.
Okay.
And I was looking through, like, other stuff, and I came across these pictograms. And when I first read it, I had the exact same reaction as you all. I was like, what am I going to do with this? What is happening here?
Nothing
Why?
makes sense.
Nothing makes sense. The only reason why I gave it a shot is because I have read Wa's poetry before and have really appreciated it and engaged with it. So I gave it more and more of a chance, and I looked into it, and I find that it has a lot to offer. To the point where I'm trying to write an article about it, but like we'll see. Probably not. Who knows?
Is his other works or other poetry like similar to that, or is it very different?
Yeah, I would say this is certainly his most experimental poetry.
Okay.
I don't think any of his poetry is super easy to get into. Right. It is very modern in that sense. It's deliberately, what's the term I'm looking for? Opaque, in some senses. But I think this collection really takes it further than others. But we'll get into that. We'll get into that a little bit later. The thing that I wanted to finish off on before taking a quick break, because it's already almost 9:30, so time flies, I guess, when we're having fun. Yeah. One of the things that I wanted to raise just tangentially is the idea that he brings up is as the weather, right? And I think that's kind of interesting, right? He it's never like super direct, right? Or it's rarely super direct in this book, but it is frequent enough and present enough that I think it's worth raising, right? As a really good example of how of what we're talking about here with predictability, yeah, and how as time has gone on, weather has become increasingly unpredictable, right? But again, our ability to predict it has kind of grown increasingly, right? But has that actually changed anything, right? And I think that that's a really good example of like what we're talking about here is thinking of the weather along those terms, right? Of predictability and control, right? And you can really think of this. You see this all the time. And this is how we're tying it back into the planetary of people trying to control specific weather patterns for certain gains, right? How we're modifying deserts, for example, right? Which are the result and product of very specific types of weather patterns that have emerged over millions of years, right? And which are now increasing because of other actions on the planet, right? Africa, for example, is desertifying. Is the quantity of deserts in Africa is increasing? We'll say it that way. I'm not going to because of changes that we're producing on the planet, right? So the Sahara, for example, is taking a lot of expansion, which is devastating crops, right, and has an impact on weather patterns everywhere because you have fewer trees in places where you used to, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We gave the example of the Amazon. In South America, you see similar things happening.
Absolutely.
Where the weather is this thing that has often been relegated to the background, to use the term that you brought up during your presentation, has kind of been pushed to an unpredictable background. And yet, in many ways, it is highly predictable that these weather patterns would be so unpredictable because we keep kind of changing a lot of the world around us and pushing weather patterns into increasingly destructive or difficult to comprehend, unthinkable situations, right? The increase of tornadoes, I think he brings it up in that section I asked you to read for today. The increase in monsoons, right, in his specific region of India, right? I saw him give a talk once, and he talks about like the rise of floods on the coasts of India, right? These are all weather patterns that we just ascribe to the planet being the planet, right? And that's kind of the negative story that we tell ourselves, right? But we don't consider that there's a lot to be done. The weather is political, I guess you can put it that way, right? Which is an unexpected sentence to say, right? But when you break it down along the terms of what I was talking about, I think can make sense, right? Because our political and social or social anthropological actions can have an impact on everything. The weather then becomes political by extension, right? And I just wanted to end on that before taking a quick break, because I think that's not only a good way of summing up a lot of what we've been talking about in this first hour, but also is a good transition into why the Nlaka'pamux decided to produce the rock art in the first place. That's a bit of a sizzle, or like a not sizzle. What's the term? Preview for what we're going to be talking about in the second part of class. Weather and rock art.
Weather.
Any questions before we take a break? Okay. Maybe I made this worse. I don't know. We'll take a quick break and then just while I get some water and then we'll reconvene. Are we ready to start back up again?
Before we
Yeah,
do,
please.
it's fun because like another maybe connection-ish is like in Gun Island from Gosh.
Gosh Island. Yeah,
I was close. He does try to analyze something in like an old language from a tale. So, and it's written on I don't know if it's the rocks or this little cabin I was telling you about. So there's like this deciphering too of
very good
pictograms.
Very good. Okay, so I think it would be best if I start with a bit of context on the pictograms themselves.
Yep.
I think we can all agree on that.
Yep.
Yeah. I did mention this very briefly last class, but I don't know if any of you actually did, and it's totally fine if not. Did any of you actually look up some info about the pictograms?
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried.
Okay, good. So what did you find? Like,
you mean the forms there?
yeah, like what you see on the cover.
Well, what I find was something that was kind of hard to explain.
Yeah.
Because actually, some of them you can explain, you can see clearly, but other of them are not that clear at all. And you can even imagine what is this about.
Yeah.
And maybe if we try to explain them, probably we must be totally wrong because it's not connected to our time, maybe.
Good.
Very, very confusing.
Yeah. So this is the worst depiction of Canada I've ever actually drawn in my life because I've never been able to draw Quebec properly. Quebec and Labrador. Yeah, it's a little bit better.
It actually
not really.
kind of looks.
That's not the point.
Yeah.
I thought it was a pictogram.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. I thought.
Me too. I thought you were
Sorry,
trying to make a
Patrick.
pictogram.
There's a reason why I'm not.
I did get it. If that can read.
Oh god.
This is like the face of an animal. There.
Yeah.
It looks like a dog.
I mean, Quebec and Labrador
or a
does look a
cat.
bit like a dog. Yeah. Doesn't matter. The point is, it's an attempt at North America.
Yeah, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're right, Marcio, right? They're depictions, right? Depictions of what? Do we remember, or did we see what they're supposed to be depictions of?
Here's what I found.
Yeah.
I found humans, animals, and various forms of lines and sign.
Good.
Honestly, it's pretty much what I understood.
Okay, so
It was curves too. Looks like boats, but don't know
looks
if
like
it's
boats.
chili boats or not.
Uh-huh.
You saw those?
It's like this,
Uh-huh.
and there's like a person in it. So I was like, maybe it's a boat.
Yeah, that's the very,
yeah.
the very first pictogram, right? You can kind of see it as a boat.
Yeah. So
Never thought of that.
well, see,
Yeah.
it's a question of perspective.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I like that. Good.
But that's actually what I found too. It's a question of the process of reading and interpretation because I tried to find other text to explain it
Explain that.
because I was very confused. And there was the idea of remembering that came across, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe that's something.
Nice. Memory
So yeah, that's
is crucial here.
probably.
There's something else. The title of the book actually does give a lot there. The title of the book that I brought. That's underneath my computer. Good. So this is something that York gets at in the book. What a lot of those designs were intended as are depictions of dreams and visions that a variety of people, depending on the time and place, would have had, right? Sometimes York uses the term shaman, right, to describe it, to describe these people. Sometimes it's young people going through puberty and having like some kind of like ceremonial vision. The list can go on about what exactly. I wrote shaman, but that's not what I wanted to write. What I wanted to write was dream. Right, so the whole idea is there's some kind of ceremony attached, right, to the creation of these pictograms. Yeah. Now, interestingly, Wa always claimed and we'll get to this in more detail a little bit later, but he always claimed that he didn't know the context because it didn't exist at the time, which is not quite true. There were plenty of studies that were already done, but I think Wa just didn't have access to them, and so I think that adds a level of interest to the actual poems that he creates, and it very much adds to the interpretation side of it. Okay, so where are these rock poems? Where are they located?
British Columbia.
Yeah, good. So the Stein River Valley is roughly here in this awful map. So I might be completely wrong, geographically speaking. Right, roughly there. I think there is a map more specifically in there if you want to look it up. Did anyone see when those pictograms first emerged? Like what the earliest ones are? Or when they roughly date to?
Not really, but I'm guessing very old.
Very old is true. So roughly, the earliest ones that we still have access to is an important caveat here because there might be some older ones that have just like eroded over time. The earliest ones that we have access to are roughly from the 16th century. Right? So about 500 years ago-ish. It's a bit hard to date with any kind of precision, but that's what we can estimate here. And what's really interesting, right, is to consider what else was happening on the continent in the 16th century. You two might have a little bit of a better idea of it because it impacts us here in Quebec specifically. There's a major event that happened, yeah.
Colonization.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
So,
Am I?
yeah. So,
I think I was thinking too far ahead. I was like,
so it happened a little bit earlier in South America, right? Columbus arrived in like the 15th century, and so on. Here it happened a little bit later.
34?
Okay.
Yeah, 34.
Yeah, 34. So in yeah. So first French colonists arrived pretty much around this time as well, right? What arrived with them? Right, obviously people. Yeah. Aside from people, we talked about it actually in relation to Heart of Darkness, which is why I was so excited when it came up unprompted.
Slaves, the baggage.
Yes, slaves actually did. Not as many as would later come, but yeah, there were some slaves. Yeah, absolutely. Think more abstractly. Not necessarily more abstractly, but it is a very real thing. I brought it up in relation to Tylenol.
So I was gonna say modern things like I don't know.
Science, medicine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Prediction.
A new perspective of living, maybe different from. This is a new land, a new perspective.
Okay, so there's a lot. I realize that my question could answer a lot. Okay. Could lead to a lot of different answers.
Yeah.
So let me specify here. What contributed to the demise of a lot of Indigenous people here? So violence on the one hand, of course, and
sickness.
Good.
Yeah.
Right? We brought that up in relation to Kurtz, right? What is the horror? Is the disease that maybe that he would have encountered? We brought it up today. Now, why do I specifically highlight disease? Is that what's really, really interesting, right, about the rock art, is that what anthropologists, again, connection here, what anthropologists believe, right, is that these earliest paintings would have emerged right around the time that two things happened, right? what is called the Nlaka'pamux War, and just broadly speaking, the arrival of disease. Okay. Now, why am I making all of these connections? Okay. And I'll be giving a little bit more context to explain this. I think it's really crucial to understand that by the 16th century, as Europeans were arriving on the east coast of Canada, right, they had not yet arrived on the west coast, right? West coast arrival of Europeans would only happen a little bit later in like the 17th century, right? Or even 18th century, like thorough colonization would have happened like Cook and etc. on the west coast. But what's really interesting is that you see this artistic response, right, and production of various designs, right, on the rock. We'll come back to the rock, right, because I think that really matters as a material. Right around the time that disease is first introduced on a completely separate coast, right? Now, why does this matter? Because it would seem that the actual disease that was brought by Europeans, right, actually arrived on the West Coast before the Europeans did, right? So it traveled from one continent to another, right, in like a really quick and interesting way. Right? Interesting in a negative way, of course, right? Because disease is never fun for anyone. And so the reason why I bring up like the Nlaka'pamux War and the disease, the Nlaka'pamux War is assumed to have started because of social unrest that was brought on by like people dying from disease and so on, right? And so it would have led to like some production of rock art. Some of this earliest rock art as well, if any York's stories are to be taken at face value, right? Which I think there's no reason not to, right? As stories, they have as much value as any other story. A lot of those early pictograms apparently represent disease. Right? I'd have to find the specific one that she talks about. But does this all make sense so far? Like why I'm bringing this up at this particular moment? Let's see. While I'm looking, does anyone have any like questions or things that they want to add while I'm like thoroughly looking through this?
Let me get straight. You said the disease didn't necessarily actually got here from the east, but the west. Is that correct?
So it started in the east, and obviously European settlers kind of expanded westward, right? But it seems like the disease expanded faster than the people, right? And had an impact on cultural production on the west coast of Canada before people actually did.
It traveled all that way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Again, this is based off of the stories that are told about this, right? And from what we can gather of archaeological and anthropological evidence, right? This is of course subject to change, right, over time, right? There can be new interpretations or new information that can emerge that might completely discount what I'm saying right now, right?
It's
but
like an interpretation.
It is an interpretation.
Information do happen.
Exactly. It's an interpretation, and I think that even if it's even if it turns out to be factually incorrect, I think that, to come back to what we were talking about before the break, the idea that stories emerged at this particular moment about this particular event, even if it's not historically related, right, is an interesting thing to consider, right? The idea of telling stories, again, to demonstrate the unthinkable is perfectly described in this moment, right? Because the diseases that were brought by Europeans were literally unthinkable for the indigenous populations here in North America. They had never seen diseases like this before, right? That's just that is a historical fact at the very least, right? There was no contact before, so they didn't exist. And so on a storytelling level and on an artistic level, I think it's highly interesting to consider that. Does that answer your question, Marcio?
Yes, absolutely.
Good. And okay. I am not finding it. So, doesn't matter. So, I think as a general rule, right, it's important to stop here before I keep going and make a connection to Fredwa, right? Because there is a specific connection that I think is worth unpacking as well. I think it's important to consider for a bit the medium and the material on which they wrote these pieces of art and these pictograms that you see here. I guess I'll launch the question to you. Why do you think rock is so important? What about the material might be so engaging to consider from an artistic perspective of people who are engaging with disease for the first time and writing their dreams down on the rock, I should say.
It's solid and like tangible.
Solid and tangible, good.
As opposed to dreams. And like, well.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like, I get what you mean. Yeah, the dreams tend to be more abstract.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So putting actual dreams onto something concrete.
Yeah.
Concrete being a fun term here.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
It's not everlasting, but it lasts a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be there for a real long period of time.
So far, 500 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe as a way to keep that in the world, be like,
good.
that was there, we were there.
Yeah.
We were thinking about this.
Yeah.
Humans have this notion of like leaving something behind.
Yeah. And might as well leave dreams behind, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if this one thing that drives us, if there's one thing that I think makes human nature what it is our capacity to dream of, like, something greater.
Yeah.
And we can maybe tie this back to the idea of predictability. But wanting to, like, dream something beyond ourselves is an inherently, or at least a thoroughly human. I don't know if, like, a leopard dreams. I have no idea. I think my cat dreams. So there's that. Right, but the ability to, or the desire to translate, and I'm using that term very specifically, and we'll come back to it, to translate the abstract dreams that we have in a moment of crisis, right? The crisis here being oncoming colonization, and putting it on what is perceived to be an eternal substance is, I think, highly evocative and symbolic in the best possible way. I'm going to wait while you're furiously taking notes. I don't know, do you agree with me? Does that make sense so far? Yeah. I think it takes on an even greater valence when we consider what would come later as far as our engagement with rocks, right? The first, okay, again, a bit of a history lesson. What was Jacques Cartier looking for when he arrived in 1532?
Gold.
Gold. And what did he think he found?
India?
Yeah.
I don't know if he actually... Columbus thought he did because he was a psycho. And he refused to, like, to accept reality. I actually don't know if Jacques Cartier thought he had arrived in the Indies. He thought he found diamonds. It turns out it was quartz, because we have quartz mostly here, not diamonds. But he found quartz, and he was like, oh, cool, diamonds, right? This will justify colonization, right?
Yeah.
which we're laughing about it now because it's
No,
absurd.
the way you put it, it's
Yeah.
funny. Yeah.
Right.
Be oversimplified.
We have found diamonds. Yay!
This is mine. This one is mine.
Yeah, maybe I'm condensing like a few years here into a sentence, or a few months rather. But the basic idea is like one of the first things that that happened with the advent of colonization was this desire to mine,
Mm-hmm.
right? Mine for riches. Okay? And while industrial mining, as we kind of know it today, would not happen for quite some time, just because we didn't have the machines to actually do it, right? This notion of mining for resources and mining into the ground is intrinsically tied to the North American colonial project, actually American colonial project, right? It happened in South America too, with the gold that was thought to have been found. Well, that was found, although not on the level that was expected, right? But it would drive a lot of colonization efforts in South America, right? The stories of El Dorado, for example, were really what people were dreaming of, right? When they were coming here, it was like, oh, there's a mythical city that's made entirely of gold. Which again seems hokey now in a day and age where there are literal like Disney movies about this, but it was this dream of mining for riches was an extremely powerful one, right? And I think, at least in my reading of it, there is a kind of active resistance here, right? In inscribing dreams on the rock, right? You create something that almost resists mining, right? Because even if you physically remove the rocks, right, from the earth, right, you can't exactly collect the dream, right? It's not like you would be able to put that dream then in your pocket and then sell it on the black market or anything like that, yeah? Or make some kind of like absurd profit off it, on the stock market. There is, in its intangibility, that is nevertheless associated with this extremely tangible material of the rock that makes it an act of resistance that I think is interesting to consider. Right? Marcio, you look thoroughly confused by what I just said. Does that make? Do you have any
No,
questions?
because I was thinking about the history of my country and the colonization there, and I was just trying to see if there are some similarities, of course.
Definitely.
The idea of exploring. But the thing here is the colonization actually working up here and down there, actually, it wasn't that good.
Okay, good. Why?
Yeah, because here, as you can see now, United States and Canada, they are rich countries. Of course, they have their problems and things like that. But if you look down there in South America, they are not even close to be rich.
Good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Maybe us, Brazil there, and Chile are the most prosperous ones, but that's the thing.
There's a really great quote by a political scientist. I don't know if any of you have ever read Michael Parenti. No. He's good. He's worth looking into. He's a very radical left-wing type of political scientist.
Left-wing?
Yeah, very outspoken in his beliefs. But he has a really good quote about countries like the ones that you're describing, right? Which on the surface were like, oh, they're poor or anything like that. He's like, no, these countries are not poor. They're overexploited, right, and underdeveloped.
Indeed.
They're not, because nobody goes to a rich country, nobody goes to a poor country to make money, right? And yet, you're right, a lot of American companies and European companies do go to South America to make a lot of money off of everything. So there is something to be said about South America starting off on the path of, well, they could have been on top of the world, right? In the same way that Canada and the United States.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not necessarily to say that it would have been better for it, right? Because there are plenty of problems with the fact that the United States is on top of the world, right? From a neo-colonial perspective, right? But you're right. South America was then relegated once again to a colonial status or a neo-colonial status in the 20th century, right? In part because of extraction policies, right? And because of Cold War shenanigans that made it so that government after government was overthrown, right? Because they didn't play by America's rules. I'm sure you know that. I'm saying it. I'm sure you're well aware of your country.
The word you mentioned there, relegation, is always on our heels. Always like this. And there are a whole bunch of theories saying, "Oh, what if we were set by Dutch because there was some Dutch invasions and things like that."
Yep. It would not have. I don't think it would have changed much.
No, of course not. Of course not.
And you can look at the Philippines for that, right? They were colonized by the Dutch.
Yeah. Look at them now.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So I think there is something interesting here on a conceptual level of writing dreams down on the rock.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not to say that it ultimately saved the Nlaka'pamux or the indigenous populations of North America from the genocide policies that we implemented here. Not at all. But I think the reflex is an interesting one to kind of unpack, right, on the level of storytelling in the face of the unthinkable. For example, culturally speaking, these pieces of art are still there today. You can actually visit them. I think they're officially a national park that's like protected and preserved. And their existence was one of the foundational arguments for avoiding logging and mining practices in the area right around the time that Fred Waugh was writing the poems. Right? So there were concerted efforts to raise the trees and for logging purposes and wood purposes in the area, right? I'm sure you all know, like British Columbia has plenty of big, beautiful trees that would make incredible chairs, right, at IKEA. But part of the reason why that area was able to resist, at least partially, these kind of logging and extraction practices is because of the presence of these writings or pictograms, right? And it's interesting how, much like dreams tend to protect us, right? These depictions of dreams on the rock protected that area, right? At least in a preservation mode. Right? Anything else to add so far? Okay. One of the things, so I mentioned that right around the 70s when Fred Waugh was publishing these, right, or published this book, which came out in 75. So I mentioned that there was logging attempts and modernization attempts in the Stein River Valley area where these pictograms emerged. There is a really interesting further connection to be made that ties us back to some of our other concerns here. A few hundred years later, right, by the 19th century, we got a wonderful novel idea of saying, what if we cross this entire country with a railroad? Right? Again, worst railroad imaginable. Right? Because it was a great national project, right? We wanted to create one single unified country, and our symbol of that was the railroad, right? What better way to unify New Brunswick to British Columbia, but with the great symbol of modernity, the train. Right? There's a reason, again, why I brought up the idea of the train with the painting, the J.M.W. Turner painting a while back. Great symbol of modernity, right, and progress. And nationalist progress in this particular instance. Now, the problem for industrialists who are building this railroad, right, is that most of Canada is rock, right? Like, we tend to imagine, right, Saskatchewan and Alberta, right, which are mostly prairies, right, so great fields of mustard and flatness. But most of the rest of Canada is just what we call the Canadian Shield. Yeah. So most of Quebec, Ontario, part of Manitoba, most of the Maritimes is just mountain ranges, right, and rock. Even going into the United States. So, like, there's this massive block of stone here. And then, of course, once you get halfway through Alberta, you have the Rocky Mountains. Yeah. So most of it is just impenetrable rock. So what do you do when you're faced with something like this? The 19th century solution is bombs and TNT. Yeah, you blow it up. Yeah. And that's literally what we did, right? We kind of exploded through mountains to create the train. And slowly I'm getting to the Wa connection, trust me. What's interesting is the labor that was used for this railroad. What kind of labor did we use? Do we know?
I know we talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's people.
Yep, well, good. Yes.
But I know it's a
Was it
particular
Asians or like Chinese?
Yeah.
Precisely.
Good. Yeah, a lot of Irish, a lot of Chinese.
Okay.
Yeah. Cheap labor.
Irish and Chinese?
Yeah. They were the least expensive labor that we could find at the time. Yeah. Mostly Chinese and then Irish. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because we tend to forget that now, but the Irish were not considered white at the time because
How come?
because they were poor and didn't speak proper English.
And also, it's a whole religion.
Yeah. Catholic.
Oh, yeah?
You know,
Yeah.
they were hated by the UK.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
And since there's the Commonwealth and things like that,
Yeah.
you guys hate.
Contemporary Ireland, it's... Look, I'm not going to speak about that necessarily because I'm not the most well-versed in like contemporary Irish politics, but it has stabilized as a situation.
Yeah.
But for a long time, it was a big point of contention. Yeah.
Has a war of like more than 10 years.
Oh, much more.
Yeah.
Or more like 100 years.
It was a really long war.
Yeah.
And it still shows today, like when you go there, like, the people are like, yeah, the British.
Yeah.
But explicitly at the time in the 19th century,
but
considered third-class citizens.
But now you guys like the Irish people.
I love the Irish.
I
They're great.
love
Always
it.
love
Yeah.
19th century Irish, no. Contemporary Irish.
That was the question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very specific type of xenophobia. There's not something I should say out loud. No, I'm joking. So
Labor, Chinese.
yeah, labor, China. Thank you. So part of the labor force was Chinese cheap labor, right? That was brought in with the idea that they would be temporary workers.
Mm.
You might see resonances with contemporary discourse about cheap labor today, right?
Yeah.
More things change, the more they say the same in that respect, right? So what's really, really interesting, and I do think they have an image here, is that the Chinese laborers did not go silently, right? So obviously we know from historical record that they were there, right? Even though some of the most famous pictures of the construction of the railroad specifically took them out of the shots, right? In order to erase that history. But we know from historical record that they were there. And where it becomes interesting for our discussion today and Wa's poetry is that One day I will find it. If not, I'll just open up my thesis and show you the image that I that I scanned. Mais voyons.
Love it when the Québécois.
I know.
It's,
You have to. Every so often.
It's the only way.
Me reading was poetry. I'm like, bon.
It was very more expressive when I read it.
A few expletives.
I showed my roommate. I was like, I do not understand
Yeah,
what we're
we
doing.
did that.
Mhm.
She was so confused. She was like, "Oh dear."
Yes.
It's like not like that.
She studies politics, so it's very far from the type of texts she reads.
Yeah, me too.
What's interesting is that right around that same region, the Chinese laborers also produced markings on the rock. Wait, sorry.
I know. Oh, interesting. Okay. Interesting.
So, what you see emerge in the 19th century, right, as we're blasting rock and as we're constructing this great engine of modernity, is a renewed desire, right, in this case by a new class of exploited labor, right, to also write dreams on rock. Right, and the juxtaposition here is a well placed one on the page, because sometimes these Chinese markings were explicitly written beside, right, the Nlaka'pamux writings, or over them, right, depending on the space that they were actually writing on. And so you see this really interesting juxtaposition between history, environment, and politics that's happening on the very face of the rock. And I think they wrote it here. The actual characters are rather interesting, because they say things like clean water or spring, right? Or which is obviously interesting from an environmental perspective, right? But also, I think from a temporal perspective, one of them, and this is what's written on, this is figure 33. Yeah. So there's a group of characters that's imposed onto this one. They didn't recreate it in this case, but it's superimposed on these figures, and it reads, "In the 10th year of the ruling emperor," right? The emperor's name is unknown, right? They didn't actually write it down, but we know, broadly speaking, that it would have been between 1859 and 1875-ish.
Okay, so
Right.
it's probably Qing Dynasty.
Right. I'm not well versed enough in Chinese history to know that, but I trust you on that one. What's interesting with this idea of writing down both environmental terms, right, or specifically temporal and historical terms, is again adding that layer of juxtaposition that you wouldn't necessarily consider, right? This eternal rock, right, being explicitly juxtaposed with messaging and dreams and ideas that are particular to a specific moment, right? A specific historical event, which kind of throws our whole conception of history into a loop, right? I promised you all that we would start talking about deep time, in this class. This is kind of where it begins, where we have the simultaneous. Sorry, I'm speaking too quickly. Where we have the simultaneous eternal material, and that is the very representation of deep time, right? Time that is way beyond our scope of understanding, that extends into millions of years, right? That stories and art attempts to grasp in the present, or in our understandable moment, right? Which I think personally blows my mind, right? I think that's so cool. to put it in like completely non-literary and non-artistic,
So
like
cool.
theoretical terms. It's rad. um, because it does very much get at this notion again of trying to frame and to recognize, right, potentiality that you are raising quite accurately, I think, in your presentation, Ian. Yeah, I don't know. I'll take a break here and say, like, does anyone have any questions? Am I speaking complete nonsense here?
No. Okay. I'd go to the bathroom. Can we take a look?
Yeah, sure. We can take a 5-minute break. I've spoken for an hour already, so.
I'll be back.
Yeah.
Them, all of them.
His 4 classes plus the job.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Where do you work?
I work as a teacher in
Oh, cool.
Institut Languistique
Oh, yes.
Provençal.
Yeah.
Provençal, c'est ça la
Yeah.
prononciation.
Mm-hmm.
And there, that's the thing. And,
Yep.
so many things to do.
For sure.
Yeah.
If you had it, bro.
Yeah,
But I'm gonna survive.
I'm sure.
I'm sure you will.
Yes.
It's just gonna be.
Yeah.
But think about this. Next week is the last week before reading week.
It goes by so fast.
After that, you have like a week of just doing your readings. You don't have to go to class.
That's right. That's right.
That's always fun.
Speak for yourself. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, does anyone have anything that they want to, any questions that they have about the pictograms? I wanted to give some context for it. Obviously, like, we could spend an entire class, like, unpacking York's interpretation of it from this text. I actually hesitated to just, like, give you this text instead of Wa's poetry. But I think there's something interesting to kind of unpack with Wa's poetry itself and, like, what it is as a project. Sorry, you looked like you were going to say something.
Yeah, it's basically connected to poems because at first when I saw the pictograms, I thought that they were explaining, or vice versa, poems were explaining the pictograms in a way. So I just wanted to know if that was something like you see the pictograms first and then the poems. So I was like, are the poems explaining the pictograms in a way, or are they related?
So do you actually see? So actually, I have one version, but I don't know if it's the same version that I gave you on Studium. Does the version you have the images and then the poems, or are they side by side?
Side by side.
Me, it's one after the other.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like that.
Like this.
Okay, so I think that's just a printing, a scan thing.
Yeah.
So the original printing is side by side. So it would be pictographs and poems, right? Which I think gets at some really good way, I guess, of entering into the poems. There are 2 ways. One, I don't think they're explaining, right? Because in the colonial mindset, because Wa himself is a Chinese-Canadian poet, which is why I talked about the Chinese workers, right? His ancestors, actually like 2 generations before him, so not that far away, would have been among those like first Chinese immigrants into Canada, right? Into Vancouver specifically, in Saskatchewan. So a lot of his poetry actually engages with this familial history, right? Of Chinese presence in the prairies and locations that you wouldn't necessarily expect to have a Chinese presence, at least in the normative histories that we've told about Canada. And in his mind, right, any kind of poetic attempt to explain the poems, right, would have been to relegate them below his actual poetry, right? Which is why I think it's important for the work itself to put them on kind of like an equal playing field, right? The pictograms and the poems get their own page, right? They stand on their own, but they are in dialogue to one another, right? And I think that's perhaps a better way of understanding what his project is a dialogue rather than an explanation. right? Because, and this I got from interviews and articles that were written about Wa. I wouldn't expect you to get this necessarily just from reading the poems, right? Part of it, shoot, where was I going with this? Yeah, part of it is his acknowledgement that there is a question of perspective and interpretation going on, but also an acknowledgement that because he's not in Nlaka'pamux, which is surprisingly progressive for someone who was writing this like 50 years ago at this point, he doesn't have the same perspective as the people who would have actually drawn these figures. Yes, Nancy.
My reaction to it when I first saw was like of course, even if we don't have the dictionary to understand the pictographs, I feel like when they were drawn or written, they did correspond to something specific.
Mm-hmm.
So without knowing, it was more of a dialogue. I was it's kind of
that makes sense. Yeah.
I thought it was kind of I maybe this is a very casual term, but clumsy for him to try to interpret today without because it is a little bit interpretative, but also I was it is language, it does have some meaning and some it's not only up to interpretation,
right,
in a sense.
That's interesting.
I don't know if that's the thought I had.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And
who is he to? Because I thought it was an interpretation effort.
Yeah. So you would refer to Wa in this case as operating in the colonial gaze, right? In some ways.
Well, it was my first reading.
That's totally fair. Yeah, and I can understand
the context and stuff. That was my reaction.
Good. Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a bad reaction. I have read criticism of this work as operating on a similar playing field, right? What makes it, for me, at least more of a, at least what makes it for me something that I'm more generous towards, right? Is that even York in her explorations here is operating on a lot of guesswork, right? By her own admission, right? She is an elder of she's dead now. She was an elder of the Nlaka'pamux. But a lot of it, she admits, she's we don't know, right, what a lot of these are, because they would have been very personal to whoever was dreaming, right? One other thing that I think adds to perhaps justifying what Wa is doing here, right, and entering into dialogue, is the very first piece of text that appears in the poems, right, which is a Coleridge quote. Right? Did anyone catch what was put there? Because sometimes we tend to skip the those sections.
Actually, we skip a lot.
Yeah. So there's a really interesting quote that he pulls from Coleridge, which goes, yeah. Does anyone want to read it and tell me what exactly he's trying to say with it?
I can read it.
Go for it. That automatically means that you will have to give an interpretation of it.
I was going to say, I don't know what it means, but I can still try. Not the qualities merely, but the root of the qualities is transcreated. How else could it be a birth, a creation?
Good. What does that term invoke for you? When you see a term like transcreation, what does that mean? I say without a firm answer in mind. I do have my own interpretation, how I would read it, but I'm curious what that evokes in your mind. Because I think that's integral to understanding what Wa is trying to do here, right? I think he is performing a kind of transcreation.
He's tried to recreate something that was happened to be created a couple of minutes ago. Actually, something that is recent. Try to change its essence and give another point of view. Change it because it's necessary or the situation demands it.
Good. So you're coming back to the that Leonie was bringing up in her presentation when she was talking about recognition, right? There's kind of repetition going on, right? Or a cyclical nature. So taking something and then recycling it, so to speak. Okay, good. So in the more contemporary context that he's discussing, these pictograms might take on new valence, right? Or new understandings. I think that's something really interesting. Anything else that came to mind? Or that comes to mind in thinking of transcreation?
I was gonna say like go forward, because it could be
Good.
some transition in a way. Like
Good.
I don't know how to say it exactly, but it's kind of like go further than what you have been given.
Good.
To me, anyway.
Yeah, going further, right? So the act of creation itself, right, can mean in many ways advancing something new, right? Going towards a future, right? A poetic future, a dreamed future, right? Whatever it may be. Good, good. What other words start with trans that we can think of that might be relevant here?
Trance?
Yeah. So a trance, it's
Actually, I don't know. I must be crazy, like most of the time.
no.
But you see that that very first part of the word there,
Yeah.
trans, maybe you can connect with train. That means
okay.
going somewhere.
That's some diggy shit right there.
Yeah, trippy.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so trains, yeah. Good. That's just deconstruction 101.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to find it. All of them are just nubs of writing chalk. Good. So we think of trains. What else? So let's put a dash here. Trans, creation, trans. Trains. We'll put trains, because why not?
Of course, transition.
Transition.
Transcription.
Mm-hmm. What else?
Transcend.
Mm-hmm. There's one more that I think is very relevant here.
Form.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's not what I was thinking of. Okay, two more.
I feel like there's so many.
There's a lot.
Transform. Translate.
Translation.
But I like the other ones that you came up with. Again, I had, like I said, I had like one interpretation in mind, but I think these are all really good, right? Especially transcend is really interesting. Transition, actually, they're all good. That you can unpack all of these, right? Because at the end of the day, all of these transes, right, are forms of creation, right? Even when I think the least obvious one is also the most powerful type of creation, which is translation. We tend to imagine translation as a kind of, bridging, right? You're making legible something for one person that wasn't legible before in a different language, right? This was not legible for, I think, any of us when we first read it without any kind of context, yeah? And yet, there is a kind of creation that's happening in the translation that Wa is doing. Yeah, he's translating it into poetic language, right? Based on his own experience, perhaps a transcendent experience, right? Who's to say? That allows for a kind of creation to happen between these two texts, right, or these two forms of writing. Okay. I think also what makes it a little bit less colonial, and I'm not saying that you can't absolutely make that that argument that there is like a colonial gaze that's happening here. There, I think on some level there is, but what makes it at least more palatable than other texts that I've read personally is he doesn't seem to lessen, right, these pictograms. He's not saying that they're worse because they're uninterpretable or like difficult and opaque, right? I think his history as a poet really, like I mentioned like about an hour and a half ago, is one of opacity, right? He's intending to kind of veil things in a way that makes it difficult to fully grasp and really emphasizes the creative and dialogue aspects of the poems that he's creating.
But sometimes,
please.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead.
But sometimes translation is like this, right? Because someone he's supposed to be the translator is interpreting the original text there,
100%.
and maybe the essence of the work there is not. It doesn't reach 100%.
Good.
Due to what? To the culture, to the different cultures. And
Is translation like possible without any type of interpretation?
Good.
However small it is.
The few people that I have in my life that are translators and are working on translation would say no.
Yeah.
Right? Like a certain form of interpretation is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the other part of that quote, that Coleridge quote that he repeats every so often in the collection is also interesting, where he's not talking about the qualities, but the roots of the qualities, right? And I think it kind of gets at this idea of transcending, right? Where he's talking about the essence of something, not the thing itself, right? He's getting, if you again wanted to use like a modern parlance that I've used a few times in this class, right? It's almost as if he's getting at the vibe, right, of what the pictograms tell him or seem to him to be, without necessarily purely trying to say for certain this is what they are, right? I don't know. That's how I interpret it.
Yeah, could the root of the qualities, like, because when I read it first, I thought of like the history behind.
Good.
Because it's really loaded.
Yes, I guess that is a good question that we can ask. What are those roots?
Yeah.
So the history of what? History of what? Of the pictograms? Of Law's history? All of it?
Of the people also writing history. Or the community.
Yeah, so the people themselves. Pictograms. What in the Chinese? Okay. We can go even deeper. What other kinds of roots? What's beneath all of these that connects them?
The land?
Specifically?
The rock?
Good.
Like the land, the rock, the planet.
Yeah. Good. Right? I would say so. Right? The rock itself, right, becomes the root that allows the pictograms to grow into something more than just a dream that a starving shaman would have had in a trance, right? I'm not just saying that as a joke. That is something that would have would have happened in some occasions, right? So yeah, absolutely. The rock is part of the roots of Wa's Chinese heritage, right, as we established with the railroad. The Nlaka'pamux themselves with the creation of the pictograms, right? Good. Anything else that comes to mind with any of this? What other kinds of roots? So the roots of history and land. Is there any other types of roots that we might?
Of course, we're not going to mention the Irish.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah. I mean, there. You laugh, but there's like a big history of like Irish stories related to rock and stone, right? Yeah. It's
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. It's a big thing. It's quite interesting. And again, it's like outside of the purview of like this specific class, but there would be quite a bit to unpack there. Yeah. Has anyone, by the way, ever been to Gros-Île? Yeah, here in Quebec.
No.
Okay, it's worth it. Speaking of the Irish,
I did
what's
teach
the
a
name
unit on knit in high school.
yeah, Gros-Île, it literally big island. It's not a particularly big island, actually. It's a tiny island in the middle of the of the St. Lawrence River, but it's big compared to its sister island, which is even smaller somehow. And it was basically a place where Irish refugees who were fleeing from the famine that was happening in the 19th century stayed for quarantine, right, as they were arriving in Canada.
Yeah.
A lot of them died and are still buried there. But actually, it's kind of interesting because on that island, there is a massive stone cross erected in the memory of the thousands of Irish who died waiting for entry into Canada during quarantine, right? And so again, this kind of history of like preserving some kind of memory in stone reappears, right? So I think you're absolutely correct, Marcio. Yeah, there is the Irish that we can kind of bring in here with the 19th century, right? And a lot of them would have had dreams of escaping into something new, right? Escaping the death and famine of Ireland at the time. And
the conditions on the boat.
Yeah, for sure. Which wouldn't have been entirely like out of the realm of normality at the time, just health conditions. Most places in the 19th century were not phenomenal.
But especially boats.
But especially boats that took weeks to cross an ocean.
Yeah.
And especially the Irish. Yeah, it was a whole thing. So, but no, there's 100% a lot to say there. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
I was going to say
Yes, please.
ancestry.
Ancestry, good.
Did I forget words for that?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll add that to the... I guess you can tie them all. Good. Now, classic me, I spent too much time talking about other stuff and not about the actual literature. So you've clearly demonstrated mixed reactions vis-a-vis the poems, right? Which is, again, fair. I try new things. This is the first time that I'm actually teaching this specific collection, so I was unsure about like how it would be responded to. So it's fine if you're not like 100% on board with it. But aside from uncertainty, what other kind of reactions did we have to Wa's poems? Right? What stood out to us? Was there a particular poem that kind of grabbed your attention? Because we can kind of unpack any of these in relation to what we've been talking about. So I'm wondering if there was anywhere in particular that you were interested in going.
I'm searching it.
Okay. Just take one at random, basically.
There was one where I think it was just like 2 words.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a few that are like that.
And I mean, it's not the one, but it's just turtle, baby, canoe, portage.
Yes.
Right.
I was just like, what?
Which
this-
one is that?
So this one's
Yeah,
on page 12.
27. At least
Of
mine
the
is
PDF.
27. So I don't know if it's the same.
Okay.
It's literally just 4 words.
Yeah, good. Okay, so sure, let's take that one.
It was just like, oh dear, I what?
Yeah, so it would be a bit awkward, but if you can zoom out and kind of look at them side by side to one another, I guess, or the images side by side to one another. Let's unpack this a little bit. So turtle. So how do we read it, first of all? Turtle baby canoe portage or turtle canoe baby portage? Portage. Yeah, portage. Yeah, portage is actually how it's pronounced. Sorry. First of all, do we all know what portage means?
No, what is that?
Portage is just it's the act of taking a boat from one river to another.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So actually, the clip that I showed you of Werner Herzog a few weeks ago, and where he had to like bring a boat across a mountain, would have been a form of portage, an insane form of portage, but it would have been one. Yeah. Usually, it was done actually by indigenous peoples with canoes,
Yeah.
right? So they would have, if the rapids from one place was too difficult to cross by boat, they would take their canoe out, walk with it, and then reset it wherever they could safely travel.
It's like
by
the
boat.
verb porter.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's exactly where it's from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People that do a lot of like canoe camping.
Yeah.
Expeditions will
Yeah.
have to figure that out a lot.
Yeah, but you're right, because it is a French, it's from the French word
Yeah.
porter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why there's a lot of places now in Quebec that are called something portage,
Yeah.
right? And in Ontario a little bit, yeah. Or Nova Scotia. Okay, so yeah, how do we read it, first of all? Do we read it turtle canoe baby portage or turtle baby canoe portage?
Now that you say it, I would have read it from side to side, but that's just because you usually read first line that way.
Uh-huh.
But now that I see that there's like 2 capitals later.
Yeah.
It's like the beginning of
I initially read it like
Yeah.
turtle canoe baby portage, but
Because
I don't know.
the capital letters.
Yeah.
Just maybe it's from up to down.
Yeah, good. That's a really interesting one. It's one that I'm actually like thinking about writing in that like article that I had earlier mentioned. Hold on, let's see if I can like find that half-assed piece of writing, just to kind of get my own notes for it. Yeah, okay. I called it a choreography of carrying. Why did I do that? I like that term, but why did I do that?
It is pretty poetic.
Yeah.
I love it when we write stuff and then we go back to
Yeah, you're going,
Oh,
happens all the time. I basically write most of my stuff in automatic writing. And just like, I go into like a writing trance, and then I send it in, and Heike wants to kill me after. Why did you do this to me? How were you able to write 100 pages like this? I don't know. But, okay. But all jokes aside, right? I do think what I was getting at when I was saying a choreography of carrying, right? All of these are vessels in some way. Yeah. The turtle has its shell, right? That carries it in some way, or it carries its own shell, and the shell protects it and has some kind of carrying. The canoe, of course, right, carries people and things. Oh, you good? Okay. People and things. What does the baby carry?
Hope.
Ooh, good.
like.
That's good. Yeah. And is carrying. Ooh. Yeah, no, that's awesome. It is carried.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As well.
You create one.
Yeah.
So
Wait.
it's kind of canoe form.
Yes. Good. Actually. Yo, that's awesome. Yeah, but it is a bit of a canoe form. So the parent's arm, I was going to say the mother, but let's be inclusive here. The parent's arm um, can be a kind of portage, right? For a baby, definitely. Um, but it's interesting because the baby that he sees is it. Yeah, what part of the pictogram is the baby? I guess would be a good question to ask. Is it the thing that's in the semicircle or inside the canoe-ish thing?
Definitely looks more like a turtle because of the.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
looks like a fish, you know.
The shape of the legs.
Yeah.
I don't think my legs can do that normally.
No, I hope
I
not.
hope.
Yeah. But I think it's just like a difficult. I'm not going to demonstrate it. I have some pride.
But also, it does look like the form is carrying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hmm
I don't think a baby would have the strength to carry a canoe.
No, I wouldn't say so. I'm the thing that comes to mind also is turtle canoe as a kind of oh shoot, what's the term? Compound noun, right?
Yeah.
It's a canoe that's in the shape of a turtle or a turtle that's acting like a canoe, right? Whichever way that you kind of want to see it. Oh, that's good. Yeah, so there's there's this whole like dynamic of connections that's going on, right? And carrying that's going on. But what I find particularly interesting about this poem fragment, right, whatever you want to call it, transcreation, right, is that it also demonstrates a form of renewed creation that's happening. Everything okay, Marcy?
Yeah.
Cool. It does kind of demonstrate this kind of transcreation in the sense of associating the human and the non-human in these kind of unexpected ways, right? We don't know what's associated with what. The living turtle or the animate turtle with the inanimate canoe, the baby representing hope, life, and etc. that you're talking about, Alicia, also associated with inanimate objects, right? Or inanimate events. So there's this very interesting dynamic that's happening in the poem that whichever way you want to read it, right? Whether it's turtle baby or turtle canoe and baby portage, kind of replays itself in constantly recreated meanings, right? Well, I'm glad I record the episodes now because now I'm going to actually write this down later. Okay, I say episodes, classes. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Like
last time on The Office or whatever.
do you remember?
Probably not. Yeah. Anything else that stands out to us about this poem, or the image that's associated with it? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know. I was
Please,
I was there. Maybe you already mentioned that, but this turtle,
Yeah.
if you will, maybe it's inside of something, and that something represents that she's. It's a kind of actually there in that circle, and can't leave this.
Oh, okay, so you see that little thing in this that little
Yeah.
thing as the turtle.
Yeah,
Oh, I was thinking of the outer thing as the turtle. Oh, that's good.
yeah. Inside the or something that you see, there is no opening there, and it's kind of there forever for that represents their life or their environment.
Yeah. Good.
I don't know.
That's awesome. I don't know what to make of that, but that's cool. I like that. I guess it gets at what we were talking about of the turtle inside the canoe, or the kind of hyphenated turtle canoe, which is something that Wa would be very interested in. Not necessarily in this collection. I don't remember if there's actually any. Well, there's some. Okay. He's very interested as a writer in the hyphen, right? As a syntactical tool, right? Sorry. And just a quick search here of the hyphen symbol. Apparently, it happens 39 times in this collection. So he does utilize it in interesting ways throughout Quarter Moon, for example, on page 19 of the actual document. Treetops, face mask, ski do type. Right, so he's constantly interested in connecting these things that you wouldn't necessarily expect connections in. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at, Marcio, even if there's not explicitly a hyphen that's that creates those connections. Our mind kind of inspires the hyphen, if you will, right? Tries to find the hyphen among all of these terms. When I say that Wai is interested in the hyphen, he's interested also mostly from an ethnic standpoint, right? For him specifically, it would be something like Chinese Canadian would be a very interesting hyphen to unpack for him. That hyphen between those two cultures or nationalities, right? But of course, it does extend to questions of human and non-human connections.
By hyphen here, you mean the link?
Yeah, like that little
okay,
dash that you put between terms.
Le tuer.
I'm sorry?
Le tuer.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
I love the French language.
Yeah. It has its moments. Yeah. It's cool. Good. What other poems stuck out to us, if any? I have another one that's short that I'm thinking of, but I'm curious. I want to let you all speak first. This one came out a little bit blurry, the one that I was thinking of, but maybe it's not blurry in the version I gave you. The one I'm thinking of is on page 25. 25, like as it's written on the document itself. It's the one that goes NVSBLE TRAC.
Yes.
TRC. Okay. Yeah. The one that's missing letters, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is yours blurry? Because the scan that I had is
it's 53. Mine.
No.
53. Okay.
Not blurry.
Okay, so I guess I took a different version. The BLE is a bit blurry, but I think that's just a scan issue. What is he actually? What are the missing letters here?
I guessed invisible tracks.
Invisible. Oh, so you added an S.
Or track line. I added an S.
Oh, sorry. I synchronic.
I did do that. I don't know if it's synchronic.
I don't. So I think that's the point. I don't know if it's actually true. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I really wrote like invisible tracks.
Yeah.
Pointing the other direction.
So there's missing eyes in the first one.
Yeah.
Could it be invisible trick?
I thought that, and like I don't know, maybe non-visible because there was an N. Didn't know if it was a.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so you would add. You can basically add like almost infinite, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
I was going to say indivisible, but no, that doesn't work because there's no space between and V. Invisible truck, but that just
You're right.
I mean,
It's there, but we can't see.
This ancient
takes a turn.
Yeah. This ancient drawing depicting a truck. I mean, all jokes aside, it is invisible, so you can technically have it like whatever your imagination is, right? Because there is by definition no visibility of whatever the TRCK is, right? Whether it's a track, a trick, a truck, a trek. Trek is K, not CK. But I think tracks works though, because if you look at the pictogram, there's like two bars, right? Or two, I guess, two lines, right? Which I guess are the tracks, but then they wouldn't be invisible.
Yeah, that's why I saw more like a trick. Especially there's two animals. I don't know why I thought magician.
Oh yeah, because
Swapping.
yeah. Because the guy's the figure, right,
And
with the
there's like
horns.
a line, and it's just like I saw it like this.
Yeah, that's
I
interesting.
don't know where my mind went.
I like it though, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of like magic coming out of his
And the
hands.
idea of like the invisible tracks, there's already two, but
Yeah.
I think there might be more if we're like
Oh,
in
yeah.
terms of like invisibility.
Yeah. What are the animals walking on?
Yeah. No, but yeah.
Yeah. So nothing.
Mm.
By the way, the horned person. Did you notice that he kind of shows up a few
No.
times? Yeah. It's a recurring symbol. We don't necessarily have time to get into it here, but the goat and horned person shows up quite a few times in the Nlaka'pamux drawings. If I remember correctly, based off of the stories here, actually, there's one right there, also a bit of a horned person. If I remember correctly, the story goes that in the Nlaka'pamux tradition, there were these kind of mythical creatures before human time, right? That were kind of blended between human and animals, right? Which is where you get people with horns, or even people on stones, right? The idea of dreams on stones is kind of inherited from that kind of before time, that mythological age, so to speak, to use the term that's used in York's retellings. So it is a kind of interesting way for the story to kind of pull from some kind of ancient past, right? From a storytelling perspective, going back into pre-human time, in ways that, again, usually spirituality helps us get out, right? To answer your initial question about a completely different topic, but also is just interesting to consider from a cultural standpoint of how we choose to depict non-human creatures, right? I think it is also a very interesting choice to remove, because I think we all agree the first term is invisible, right? I don't see what else it would be. Why remove the eye? The eye is a very interesting thing to remove here.
I feel like you just said it.
Oh, okay, so you're thinking eye.
Eyes
That's
are
it.
the eye, like the individual.
Yeah, or I saw it more like vision.
That's interesting.
Good. Okay, yeah. So I would add that as part of the roots. Right? On a syntax level, it is like the basis of writing and language, right? It's the root of what he's working with his poems. But also perception, right? The eye, in the organ, right, is integral to this whole creation that we're talking about here. Both our reading of it, Wa's reading of the pictograms, right, but also the pictograms as a form of perception, right, seeing and perceiving dreams, right, and allowing other people to see them by putting them on stone, right? So that organ is extremely important. How is the eye, the middle eye that I put here, the eye person, removed? Actually, is it removed? Might be a better term.
Because it's clear there is an eye there, and so to speak, let's just say it should be clear that there is an eye there, and I don't know.
So in a sense, and correct me if I'm not accurately representing what you're saying here, but even though it's not explicitly stated, the inclusion of the personal pronoun is implied.
Yeah, there's
right? Like,
someone responsible for that.
good.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's not necessary to mention him or her.
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. The I is always included.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
The all-seeing eye.
Oh, nice. Yeah. the all-seeing I, like, individual.
Yeah, just like in the
That's
novel.
That's good. That's good. I like that. Now we're cooking with gas. Yeah. Okay, sorry, Leanne. You go ahead. You look like you were going to say something.
just like we said with translation, that can it really exist without interpretation?
Yeah.
I wonder if like interpretation doesn't really exist without an eye, without a perceiver or an interpreter.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A lot of people would argue that no, it doesn't. Right. And it's kind of what we talked about at the very end of what was the Shelley poem? Mont Blanc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How does he end that poem? Would you exist and would you be so grand if I couldn't see you?
Yeah.
Right? He brings it back to all of these eyes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or the last two at least. Kind of emphasizing the element of perception that both of you are bringing up here. Yeah, very, very good. Yeah. Any other poems that we want to highlight? Obviously, we can't touch upon all of them. So we're just creating connections here. We can almost go at random.
There's the one on page 23.
23.
23, like the number.
Okay, the number at the bottom. Yeah.
So it's on page 49 in the PDF.
Yep.
49. Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, the one that's associated with all the cows that are. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the weird centipede creature.
Yeah.
Good. That looks like a
I
Cthulhu monster.
found something as I was like looking up online about this idea of like the battle with the forest,
Good.
which is not necessarily representative of how the indigenous population did understand this image, which I thought was interesting.
Good.
I
Say
didn't
more.
highlight that.
How did they understand this image?
I can't remember
Okay.
right now. Yeah.
I actually don't remember if they talk about it in this one. They don't. I want you to battle with the okay. As I'm looking, so I'll just read it. I walked into battle with the forest. I tried on the buffalo horn headdress. Things happened to me. Visions and pictures, 2 or 3 signs. I pushed one way and I pushed another way. Sighs gave dance to me. The deer showed me form. The larval, it opens up. There's, again, if you kind of look at the image here, the way I read it is that he's reading the image from left to right, right? Like, I walked into battle as those 3 people at the start, right? One of them seems to have no legs or just like a rock leg. I don't know what's happening with that first person in the corner there. And then I tried on the buffalo horn headdress, which is, I guess, the minotaur-looking figure towards the bottom. Yeah. So he's kind of creating this. It's almost like a comic book story.
Narrating.
Yeah, he's narrating or narrativizing. It's the same person. It's the same I, right? Interesting use of I, by the way, to come back to that. Completely unintended, but still interesting use of I. That's going from one place to another. And even if Wa himself admits that he knew very little about the creation of these pictograms, he kind of gets at it in a really interesting way. Not necessarily the battle thing that you were mentioning, Leonie. Things happened to me, visions and pictures, 2 or 3 signs. That's basically what we were describing in the first part of our discussion of these pictograms, right? Can't stand laughter. What are you doing? Yeah, so even if unintentionally, he gets at this notion that we're dealing with visions and dreams on some level. Yeah. In this case, a vision of perhaps the battle to come, or of more than human, more than human beings, right? The larval state that opens up and at the end into presumably something new. Who's to say, right? 'Cause I don't know what that thing is at the end, right? Again, it looks like something out of an H.P. Lovecraft story, and I don't know what to make of that. So that's why I'm looking it up in here to see if there's anything that was said about it. Anything else that comes to mind while I...
Feels like there are two groups of creatures. Let's put it like this.
Good.
On the left side, you see the creature there, the so-called mythological creature there.
The
There are
one
two
with
of
the...
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the middle, and there are two groups there. Some are running to the left, and the other ones, the cows there.
Yeah. The buffalo.
Yeah, buffalo or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And they are, I think they are running
Oh,
because of this mythological creature there.
Interesting.
I don't know.
They seem to be going towards it. Or they're facing it.
Except for one of them that's like facing up.
Yeah. There is that.
Like, what is that turtle thing? It's not a
I think that's the open up at the end that he's talking about. It opens up is that's how Wa sees. It's this larval thing with the like eye centipede thing. By the way, an eye at the end of the centipede creature, right? There's a bit of an eye at the end of it. I think that's what he's saying that turns into, right? It opens up and it goes from that larval creature to what looks, I guess, like the turtle that we saw before. Yeah.
Hands closed. Kind of looks like
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yeah. So that's again, it depends how you want to read it, because all of these would have been made by different people. And so it might be the exact same thing, but just depicted slightly differently depending on who would have drawn it.
Compared to like different handwriting.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
It's interesting that there's the part things happen to me, visions and pictures, 2 or 3 signs that like represents the visions and the dreams.
Yeah.
And then size gave dense to me. Figure showed me form. So like size and form. It's like are dictated.
Yeah.
And when they say the larval, it opens up.
Yeah.
I'm like trying to understand.
Yeah. There's often... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Size and form seem to be like more tangible than dream and vision.
Yeah. Good.
I don't know.
You'll notice if you reread the poems, and this is not something I got on the first reading, so I wouldn't blame you if you didn't necessarily notice. You see this kind of movement that he's describing in this one from left to right, or from concrete to abstract and vice versa. These movements reappear constantly in the poems, right? There's one, hold on, that I'll pop up here. Damn. Where is it? Oh, yeah. It was beautiful. Yeah. Okay, so this is on page 22, right? As it's written on the PDF itself, right? Because I'm working with a slightly different version. The one that starts beautiful, big, surfacing lake, right? You see this in a really direct way, right? Where you start off with beautiful, which is a rather abstract adjective, right? And as the poem keeps going, it literally surfaces, right? The use of the term surfacing is interesting, into something concrete, a lake, right? Something that you can very easily imagine, right? And much in the same way as rock or anything else material in this world, right? You can touch and interact with, Right? And so you see a lot of these movements from abstract to concrete, from subsurface to surface, from sky to earth, earth to sky, etc., happening all across these poems. It was one of the reasons why some critics have argued that this can be considered a kind of long poem, right? Because they're so connected thematically and cyclically that you can almost consider it as one unit, right? Unlike a lot of poetry collections, which are just a couple lines of poetry and then on to something else completely different, right? So I think that's absolutely a good catch. The last thing I want to mention, just on the buffalo thing, before I forgot. Why would buffalo matter here? I think that's a really interesting. This is another historical bit here. Would buffalo be some kind of symbol or image that might ring some bells for anyone? It's okay if not. It's just, again, usually if I just like to ask so I don't have to over-explain things.
No, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe a religious thing, but
but we'll say traditional, broadly speaking. So we used to have a lot of buffaloes here in Canada, right? We'll say North America, broadly speaking. Yeah. Where did they all go?
I honestly don't know.
Okay. Where do you think they would go? Do they just leave? Take a boat to the Arctic?
I would say north.
North?
I would go north. North.
Okay. No.
Thanks for showing us.
Just up there.
Just leave. Hitch a ride on a later truck.
Don't tell me they gone just because of the colonization.
Why? That's what I was gonna.
We killed them all.
So it's and I don't know if Wa is specifically thinking of this, right? And I'm realizing that there's 5 minutes left here to class, which is why I'm slowly trying to wind down. Yeah. So yeah, they used to be just hunted, right? They've always been hunted for a variety of things, food, pelts, and stuff like that. But one of the things that the advent of colonization brought, right, is overhunting, right, and over exploitation, right, and to slowly try to tie everything that we've talked about together today, right. I forgot to kind of bring it back to the notion of weather that I promised I would before. But you can kind of think of it along similar lines, right? These animals, right, were a part of the ecosystem like anything else, right? And much like the rock and logs and just general planet that has slowly been changing over time, right? In my mind, when I read things like buffalo in relation to indigenous art, right, I immediately think of this event itself, right? It is also part of the hyper-exploited systems that thoroughly had an impact on ways of life, right? And again, I don't mean to necessarily take every class and blame colonization for every problem that we have in our society. Don't get me wrong, it is a problem for most things that we have in society. And next week when we talk about forage, it will be less a concern of colonization. It's slightly more hopeful, I think, in many ways. We're going to come back to the hope that Split Tooth kind of introduced us to. But that's what I think with buffaloes, right? Is that it is, at the end of the day, a symbol of this hyper-exploitation as well that happened, and that even if he's not deliberately doing so, I think is an interesting choice by Wa to mention and bring up in relation to these kind of transcreations that he's writing. yeah, I don't know. Is this anything? Who's to say? One of the things that I would like you to take away uh, from these poems, and obviously we only touched upon like 3 of them at the end of the day, right, is because they are so opaque, right? I think this is one of those collections that you can kind of take in so many directions if you feel like coming back to it, right? Either in your essays at the end or in a critical reading that you might want to do. Right? The very openness of the poems is, I think, part of their interesting feature. Right? You were more critical of it, right? Because it's difficult to understand, right? Fair enough, right? What I would say, and this is how I'm going to kind of tie it into the planetary, is that it's okay to not understand something. It's okay to acknowledge that there are things that are kind of unthinkable and unpredictable and imperceivable in its entirety. And I think that's one of the beauties of Wa's poems, is that he kind of gets at that through lyrical language. Right? And I think that's what he means when he's saying transcreation, is that he understands the roots of the Nlaka'pamux rock art as doing a similar thing, but with an entirely different language and writing system. That's why I think they're cool. You can completely disagree with me on this, and maybe this was a mistake to talk about in class. I don't know, right? But that's what comes to mind, right? That's my way of connecting everything that we've talked about since the beginning of class this morning. Any final thoughts?
I would like to say that very excellent class, because you connect that
Yes.
with if you put all the subjects on the table here, okay, just try. Even if you read everything, it's hard to get connections.
Yeah.
I feel like it's
After
only through discussion.
After your approach there, everything is more clear, or actually more easily to be understood.
The only way I do that is because you brought up some awesome, excellent points. If it would, no, I'm serious. I cannot emphasize how much I appreciate your input in this class. I know I say it every week. I do genuinely appreciate how much you participate in this, because it allows me to kind of make connections that I did not make before necessarily, and you are all a part of what makes this productive, right? So cool. Thumbs up. Triple. No, you can't see my toes, but I'm doing a thumbs up with my toe.
That's possible.
Okay, so next week we're doing forage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, if you want, there is. I'm sure you can find a digital copy of it online. I'm sure some of you already have, and that's okay. If you don't want to get it at the library, at the bibliothèque. Librairie. There you go. Not all the same thing. It is also a bit experimental. Have any of you started reading it?
No.
I've only looked through it a little bit.
It's also a little bit experimental in the way that Waz is, but I think Rita Wong is... Her images and poetry is clearer than Waz. Right. Before I say anything, I will ask. Did you? Sorry. Sorry. I was just wondering if you had a question. Suddenly, my screen went black. Okay. Fred and Rita, I believe. Yes. Okay. So I did not completely fabulate this. So it would be actually interesting for you all to consider as well as you're reading. We could have almost done this for class, but I don't have a copy of it, so it would have been a bit weird. both Rita Wong and Fred Waugh did co-write a book together, right? So it might be interesting to consider where their poetry and poetic style converges. And diverges, right? They're two completely separate poets, right? Rita Wong is much more contemporary. She's younger, and has produced work in more the 21st century than was 20th century. But there are connections to be made, and there's a reason why they would have co-written books together, right? Or a book, I should say. I don't know if they did more than one. But yeah, it might be just something to consider.